Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell welcoming you to today's episode of CAIR on Air, our special Ramadan series. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you are doing well and staying safe, inshallah. As you know, we are now in the last 10 days of Ramadan. MashaAllah, it's gone by so quickly for me and maybe for many of you as well. May Allah guide us to make very good use of these final hours and days of Ramadan. Forgive us, have mercy upon us, pardon us, and allow us to leave this month with a heavy balance of good deeds and no bad deeds whatsoever. As you all know, it's not only a month of fasting, but also a month of giving. And so we want you to keep CAIR in mind as you're donating to many worthy organizations across the country this month. Please go to cair.com/Ramadan to make a donation. Alhamdulillah, we're making progress towards our Ramadan goal, but we're not there yet. We definitely need the community support. We defend the community, but we also depend upon the community, mashallah. So please help us defend you, help us protect you by supporting our work with a donation, inshallah. And please also make sure to support our local chapters around the country. With that, I want to dive into today's program. We have a very special guest coming to us from CAIR, Massachusetts. Let's bring on Faluma Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, Faluma. She is the Youth Advocacy Director of CAIR, Massachusetts. Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. How's everyone in Massachusetts? How's the team? How's our good friend John Robbins doing?
Alhamdulillah, everyone is doing so well. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah keep it so. May Allah keep it so. We've got a thunderstorm here in where I'm at. So if you see any flashing blue lights, not technical difficulties, just a storm. So may Allah make it a beneficial rain. So Faluma, you at CAIR Massachusetts, you all released a report this week. Very important report documenting a very important issue. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, yeah. So CAIR Massachusetts has released our first ever Muslim youth bullying report this week. And this report came out of a lot of incidences that our office was getting of stories of young Muslims who were being harassed or were facing many different forms of targeted bullying in their schools. And oftentimes, like, these stories were anecdotal, but there were no numbers specifically from Massachusetts that was highlighting what the actual experience of young Muslims was. So in the spring of 2019, we actually went on a mission to conduct this survey to really begin to understand the experiences of young Muslims and to document, analyze, and publish a report that was looking at what is the experience of young Muslims and what is their specific experience with, like, religious-based bullying that they face from their peers, from teachers, from staff, and really thinking about, like, what are the best mechanisms of addressing that moving forward, and really providing some necessary information for community members, for parents, for teachers, and anyone who works with young Muslims within their school districts. So the report, we've been able to analyze our findings, and some of the findings are very disheartening, I would say. We've found that 60% of our respondents have, out of about 200 participants who took the survey, 60% of them have stated that they faced bullying, and they've reported being mocked, verbally abused, or physically abused for the fact that they are Muslim. And that's 3 in 5 students who state that. We found that 33% of our participants have altered their behavior, have changed their appearance, or even changed their names, just so they can hide the fact that they are Muslim, just so they can stop the constant harassment that they're facing. And additionally, like, 17% of respondents have had physical abusement, specifically having their hijabs pulled, or other forms of offensive touching that they've experienced. One of the stories that came into our office was a young Muslim girl who had to literally take her hijab off in order to feel safe at her school, but that still didn't keep her entirely safe because the students were still bullying her. And additionally with that, I think our our report has also found that there is like a growing mistrust within the Muslim youth as it pertains to their engagement, even with their teachers. 40% of students have stated that teachers or staff members have made offensive comments about Islam or Muslims within their schools. So those are just some of the findings. Our survey had 35 questions, which the report gets deeper into what the specific answers for each of those are. Yeah.
So how many, do you know, Faluma, off the top of your head, about how many students participated and how many schools they represented?
About 200 students participated. We don't have an exact number calculated for the schools, but our survey was done anonymously, but we made it intentional to really go out into the community and make sure that all our community members had access to the survey and to be able to take it. So we've done outreach at local Islamic schools, as well as ensuring that like local masajid leaders had access to our survey for students to be able to take it. So it was diverse within within Massachusetts, I would say.
That's good. That's good. I mean, an interesting question would be if you have, for example, data that indicates that at a particular school, you've got numerous Muslim students at that school reporting the same problem, that might give you a lead to go and target that school and try to fix the issue. One of the things you flagged, two things, stick out to me, Faluma. One is that, you're in Massachusetts, which is a very, considered a very politically liberal place, a place where people tend to be more tolerant of other cultures and religions in theory, and yet it's still an issue there, right? Can you tell us about the environment there, whether or not that stereotype is true, and what the unique environment is like there in Massachusetts for Muslims?
I think like having a state be labeled as a liberal state does not stop it from having these incidences. Like an FBI report that came out in 2017 actually stated that the #1 state that had the most reported hate crimes was actually Massachusetts. So I think that really highlights the fact that these things happen no matter where you are, and no one's safe from it. So with a lot of the incidences in our, also like the fact that like Islamophobia discourses and policies, they're not just in the mainstream world, but they really, like, I think what this report highlights, that they exist in the school environments, in the classroom. So young people who are growing up, they're not immune from this. So that it's actually like really important to also ensure that cultural competency trainings and comprehensive education is actually provided to all people, no matter where you are. So I think Massachusetts has a lot of work to do, as our report shows us, I would say.
Gotcha. Now, one of the concerning things about school bullying is not just when it happens at the hands of other students, but at the hands of teachers, administrators. In our experience, that can be everything from the teacher, teaching inappropriate things about Islam, incorrect things, or mocking a student's name, or ignoring bullying. What kind of examples were there of misconduct by staff at the schools?
I think some of the examples that you gave are also examples that came from the report itself and the narratives that students have given, where students oftentimes felt like they were singled out in their classroom, or other students might be making insensitive comments, but the teacher does nothing about it. Luckily, there are schools, so we can't say that there are no schools that are able to provide examples of how to do this well. But I would say that there needs to be more work done. So whether it is, as you say, like making those insensitive comments, or thinking about like the way that you teach about Islam, about Muslims, and how you talk about it, especially but also even if you don't have a Muslim student in your classroom. So really thinking about like, what does a comprehensive education mean and look like? As I was stating earlier, like 40% of our respondents stated that in their classrooms, like teachers and staff, they've made offensive comments about Islam and about Muslims, and they've like witnessed that. So part of our survey was also like really looking at the teacher to student engagement, and really thinking about like how to best ensure that, because I think like it also stems from teachers being models for their students. So if like a teacher is making these comments, then obviously like that would translate to students in the classroom who feel like it's okay for them to be able to do that. So I think it's like really part of our think we might get into this later, but still talking about it. Part of our recommendation is really thinking about a comprehensive training, not just for teachers, but also like within the school, entire school environment.
To my,
oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. The host is not supposed to make that mistake. That leads into my next question, which is, you've talked a bit about some of the solutions, but break it down for us, just boom, boom, boom. What are the key structural or policy changes that you think school districts or even parents and families need to be pursuing to address this issue in Massachusetts?
I think one of the first things answering for like parents is really looking out for the signs of bullying. So a student, your youth might tell you that they're being bullied, but sometimes like that's also not the case, especially if you're fearful or you feel ashamed of like what's happening. So really to look out for the different signs of bullying, such as refusing to go to school or avoiding going to school or having unexplained injuries and things like that, and ensuring that to look out for the signs, but also looking at the policies within your state. So our report looks deeply at the bullying laws that Massachusetts has put out. And part of that is really ensuring that schools have their own bullying laws or bullying and prevention laws, that they are supposed to make it public for people to be able to look at it. So being able to compare, like, does my state laws and the school that my child goes to, like, do those two things match, and where is the missing gap? And really advocating and making sure that the schools are actually being responsive. And really, I think the other thing is like documenting what happens to you and like your students, for parents specifically, so that when you do come to CAIR Massachusetts, and we're here to be of support in whatever way we can, really having those documentations, I think, really helps. And I think within the school level is having that prevention programs and bullying laws in place. And with that also, I think, as I was saying, like having that comprehensive education for students to understand what the stereotypes are, what the prejudice and biases that are all coming into the classroom with, where do they learn that, and how do we make sure that like our entire school environments are eradicated from any anti-Muslim sentiments or any Islamophobic sentiments that we might be bringing with us from the outside world.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, that's very important. And do you think that those same changes could be something that could be pursued across the country, not just in Massachusetts?
Yes,
yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Because this report, I mean, the reason I was able to, just off the top of my head, give examples that match what's in your report. I haven't read your report. I just know from doing this work what is happening to kids. What are some of the common things that kids face? So it's not a Massachusetts problem. It's not a Georgia problem. It's an American problem, right? Kids always get bullied for something, but when you're bullied because of your faith, it's uniquely dangerous because it's such an integral part of your identity, right? And it can have so many negative consequences, just like being gendered because you're a boy or a girl, or because you're tall or short or black or white. That's just who you are. You can't change any of that. And so when people are targeting you because of those sort of, intrinsic beliefs and characteristics, it really can have a negative effect on someone. So we're happy you're doing this work, Faluma. We're happy CAIR Massachusetts has released the support. And I believe it's getting a good amount of attention from the local media. Not sure we have anything we can put on screen to show that, but alhamdulillah, it's good that it's getting the attention it needs to hopefully spark some positive change, inshallah. Inshallah. Well, thank you so much, Faluma, for joining us. We appreciate it. Jazakallah khairan. Inshallah, we'll talk to you soon. May Allah grant you a successful rest of the month of Ramadan, and the same for the entire CAIR Massachusetts staff and Muslim community there, and of course, the entire Ummah.
Ameen, ameen. Thank you, ameen. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. And so that was Faluma Muhammad, the Youth Advocacy Director of CAIR Massachusetts. Thank you so much to her for joining. We now like to bring on Zainab Chaudry, who is the Director of the CAIR Maryland Outreach Office, dear friend and an excellent co-host. We're always happy to have her here as a guest as well. Assalamu alaikum, Zainab. How are you? I'm good, alhamdulillah. I love that I can read lips. It's awesome. I was able to think, I understand most of what you said, but for our viewers, go ahead and say it again.
Walaikum assalam. Now I'm unmuted. It's great to be here. Alhamdulillah. How are you doing? How's it on my life?
Good, alhamdulillah. Very good, Zainab. Thank you so much. So Zainab, you've got a couple of excellent initiatives going on in Maryland, as always. I want you to tell us about Will you pick which one you want to talk about first, inshallah, and then we'll go through each.
So I think the one initiative we really want to highlight during this hour, first of all, thank you so much for hosting, for inviting and providing the space and the platform to have this conversation. One of the initiatives that we really want to highlight is that CAIR is working on launching the Maryland Muslim Prison Project. This is a project that was inspired by the desire to make sure that our communities are paying attention to the needs of our incarcerated brothers and sisters who historically have largely gone ignored or silenced or marginalized within our communities, within our spaces. And we really want to make sure that this Ramadan especially, make a conscientious effort to center their needs and their voices and their concerns and make sure that their rights are protected and they are protected from discrimination while they are serving out their time. As we know, there have been so many cases. CAIR National has handled so many cases in different states around the country, serving the needs and the concerns of incarcerated Muslims whose rights have been violated. And our hope is that with this particular initiative, inshallah, in Maryland, we will be able to better serve those of our communities that historically have been marginalized. Now, some studies put the average of incarcerated Muslims at state facilities up to 9%. We know at least that one facility here in Maryland, that number is closer to 25%, meaning 25% of incarcerated peoples at one particular prison happen to be Muslim. And so this is a staggering number. We really want to make sure that we are paying attention to their concerns and providing them with the resources, the support, and the information they need to be able to freely practice their faith while they are serving out their time.
Now, Zainab, it's interesting because, I think every year CAIR chapters deal with the issue of prisoners being mistreated, Muslim inmates being mistreated in Ramadan. You would think that Maryland, being a relatively diverse place, it sounds like a significant number of Muslims, people who embraced Islam in the prison system. Are there still significant issues that you're experiencing there with inmates in prison every year?
Unfortunately, absolutely, we are. And I can't comment on pending litigation, but we do have currently actively litigation ongoing on behalf of incarcerated Muslims whose rights have been violated or who have been discriminated against, who have not been able to, for example, pray in congregation under reasonable circumstances. And we do hear complaints from community leaders and Muslim chaplains who provide services on a volunteer basis. One of the biggest concerns is, especially in facilities like this particular one that I mentioned earlier, where the population of incarcerated Muslims happens to be almost 25% of the 800 plus incarcerees at this particular facility. Over 150 of them practice Islamic faith. We have heard reports that they have not been able to have access to a Muslim chaplain when they needed to. They have not been able to pray in congregation together. They have not been able to access copies of the Quran when they've requested them. So we're working actively within these particular systems to make sure that these concerns are being heard and that these brothers and sisters have the opportunity to communicate and articulate their concerns with us in an environment where they don't feel that they will be retaliated against. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges that we face is that, or that our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated face, is that there's this very real fear that if they do speak out, that there's going to be retaliation. So we want to make sure that their rights are protected, that their voices are being heard, that they are being able to have access to the same reasonable religious accommodations as any other incarcerated person who's serving out their prison sentence.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a key part of the work that CAIR does, right? Critical part of the work that we do. And as you noted, it's, Hamza, you've got so many people who are incarcerated, and so many of them want to turn their lives around, right? And they embrace Islam. And so we've got, an obligation to help them, to make sure they can practice Islam, whether that's praying or fasting or reading the Quran, which seems like a very simple request, and yet it poses a problem in some environments. So excellent. Thank you for doing that work, Zainab. May Allah make it successful. What's the next initiative?
Thank you so much, Edward. And we wanted to also just give a shout out to Ignite Council for Social Justice. We've partnered with them to launch the Eid Greeting Campaign project. So we are encouraging community members, you don't have to be Muslim, you can be of any faith or background, to send in 150 word messages to mdoutreach@cair.com, addressed to incarcerated Muslims in Maryland, so we can deliver these on Eid. We had anticipated this Ramadan. We wanted to deliver dates and Ramadan meals, provide other services. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19 restrictions, we were limited in terms of what we could offer. But we are excited about this particular project, especially because we know that many of our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, they are eager to hear from the outside community. Obviously, Ramadan is very difficult. It's even so much more difficult when you are fasting in isolation, when you feel disconnected from the community, when you feel like you're not able to even pray together in congregation while you're in prison. So we want to make sure that they know that we are thinking about them. They are in our prayers to continue to try to be as positive as possible, and that our communities also understand the obligation that we have to make sure that we stand up and we make sure that their rights are protected while they are serving out their terms. So again, the email mdoutreach@cair.com. We're encouraging people to send in messages up to 150 words, positive, uplifting Eid Mubarak greetings to Maryland Muslims who are incarcerated, inshallah. And we'd be honored to deliver those, inshallah, next week on May 12th or 13th.
Inshallah. We put that information in the comments on Facebook so people can see it there. And also a reminder, if anyone has any questions, whether our listeners on American Muslim 360 or those watching online, can post them in the comments and we can try to address them there, inshallah. Zainab, I think that was the last initiative that we want to talk about, but if I'm missing anything, please feel free.
No, that's all the updates that we have for today, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. That's excellent work, great work. And to hear the work that CAIR Massachusetts is doing to address school bullying, and that you're doing to address the mistreatment of prisoners and the protection of prisoner rights. These are two important stools of the work that CAIR does, alhamdulillah. So Jazakallah khairan, Zainab, we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Edward. And we want to encourage our communities to continue to donate to CAIR, to support CAIR this Ramadan. Your contributions are zakat eligible and tax deductible. And that is essentially what enables us to continue to provide these services to our communities in whichever capacity we can. So please continue to support CAIR, donate. No amount is too small. And inshallah, we wish you the blessed month of Ramadan.
Ameen. Thank you so much, Zainab. Thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. We'll see you soon, inshallah. And thank you all for watching. We greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or if you want to follow up with these programs, again, information is in the chat, the comments on Facebook. You can also go to our website, cair.com. And again, we encourage you to keep CAIR in mind. If you like the work that we're doing, if you support the work that we're doing, please make a donation during these final days of Ramadan. You can go to cair.com/Ramadan. Again, cair.com/Ramadan to donate, inshallah. No donation is too small. Small donations are great. Big donations are great. May Allah reward you for all of it and maximize the blessings for you and grant you the reward from anyone that we are able to help through your donations. Thank you all so much for joining. Inshallah, we look forward to seeing you on Thursday at 3 o'clock for the next episode of CAIR on Air. Until then, inshallah, assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.